Hello, my merciful brothers and sisters. It is I, MisterMercy, bringing you another video with some Overwatch gameplay. So this video is going to be about toxicity in Overwatch. But before I get into that, I would like to extend a very special thank you to fellow Overwatch YouTuber Lonehawk for featuring my gameplay in his episode 2 of Coach Hawk. He taught me a lot of interesting things about, how I should play Reinhardt and how I should play Bastion, and I think I learned a lot. So if you guys want to go see that video, I'll put it in an iCard up on this video, so that way even if you're on mobile you can watch it, and I'll also link it down in the description below. So thank you, Lonehawk, for featuring my gameplay, and thank you for helping me get a bunch of friends through that too. I got like 13 friend requests when the video went live, so thank you so much for that. And you guys can watch that video at the end of this one if you guys want to. It'll be in the suggested videos with the iCard. So let's get into talking about toxicity in Overwatch. Now, before Overwatch Competitive launched, there was still a little bit of toxicity, but it was not nearly as much because everybody was having fun. Everybody was messing around with different team comps and all this and that, and very rarely would you see, the toxic player come around. But since competitive play has launched, everybody's taking it very seriously, probably too seriously. I mean, yes, you do want to play to win. You don't want to like goof around in competitive, but they treat it as if it's like esports level stakes, and it usually isn't. As a matter of fact, they just released, they just announced a few days ago that your current rank in competitive does not matter in the slightest. What matters is your season high rank. So yeah, you can be aggressive and chase down a higher season rank, which of course the season's gonna end, I think, sometime next week. So you can chase down that higher rank, but if you're going down in rank, that shouldn't really matter. That shouldn't matter because you're still gonna get your season high rank for that season of competitive play. So I think that's a really good thing, and it takes a lot of the pressure off people like me who keep going down in rank and just get stuck in elo hell. So I think that's great, and that's going down in rank is no longer really a valid excuse to be toxic to anybody. But then again, there's really no valid excuse to be toxic to anybody. However, I wanted to talk about in this video what toxicity is, what it is not, and how you can combat it in Overwatch. So one thing that I see a lot of, or hear a lot about, is players who are in competitive and they're, trying different team comps, and they pick somebody, say like Hanzo or Ana, and their team says, I don't know if Hanzo or Ana is really viable on this map, maybe you should pick somebody else, and that gets internalized as being toxic, and like, oh, I'm gonna report you for being toxic, blah, blah, blah. That, my friends, is not being toxic. If you ask a player to change heroes nicely, granted, not asking them to change heroes in a way that comes off as harsh or demanding, if you can ask them to change heroes nicely, and say, hey, I don't know if this hero is going to work that well on this map, maybe we could try this or we could try that. If you're asking nicely for a player to change heroes, then that player has no excuse to, get toxic back at you, because that's not toxic behavior, asking somebody to change your hero. This is Overwatch. That's what you're supposed to do. And, if you are uncomfortable playing a different hero, or, the hero that they're suggesting is not one that you're good with, and you feel that, you'd be putting your team at a disadvantage by playing the hero that they're suggesting to you, then work with your team, coordinate with them, talk with them in chat, talk with them over the mic, and build a better team comp. So, say they're suggesting to you that you play, a Reinhardt or something, because maybe you're playing Hanzo or something, and you say, oh, I'm not really good at Reinhardt, but, I am better at McCree, say, so they can say, okay, well, you can play McCree, let's find somebody else to play Reinhardt, because, that's how you build a good team composition. Don't assume that because somebody is asking you to change your hero, that they're insulting your ability to play that hero, or they're insulting you as a player. They're not. They're just trying to build the best team composition possible to pull off a winning strategy. So that's what toxicity is not. Let's talk about what toxicity is. Toxicity would be insulting other players' abilities both on and off your team. It doesn't matter if they're on the enemy team or they're on your team. If you're insulting somebody's ability to play a certain hero, that's being toxic. And all of these, it really depends on if you're in your team chat or you're in the overall match chat, as to who this really affects. But if you're on match chat, I can definitely say that it doesn't matter, who your toxicity is targeting. Everybody is gonna lose because of that. Everybody's gonna perform worse because of that. And that goes for pretty much all of this. Granted, if it's more focused on your team, then that's gonna be your team that's gonna be suffering. But if it's directed overall to the enemy team, or it's just projected in the match chat, then everybody on both teams is gonna play worse because of your toxicity. That includes your team, their team, and then it's really a toss-up of who's going to actually win because everybody's upset. So another way that toxicity can manifest is by yelling at your team to just do stuff in chat over the mic. Like saying, "Oh my god, Reaper, get on the point," or just like, saying these, just being demanding of your team. Now, there are ways that you can communicate with your team to do stuff that isn't toxic by encouraging your team. For example, using that Reaper thing that I just mentioned. Instead of just saying, "Oh my god, Reaper, get on the point and do this and that," he's like, "Hey Reaper, let's push the point." So there are ways that you can ask your team to do stuff that isn't being toxic, and I think players need to do that instead of just being Mr. Demandy Pants and demanding that everybody follow their orders. So another way toxicity in Overwatch can manifest, this kind of goes back to the last point I was just talking about a little bit, but say for example, you are playing a game and there's an enemy Pharah that is completely wrecking you, and say you're playing, I don't know, somebody like maybe Mei. I know that not a lot of people play Mei. She's not a highly played character, but go along with me. So say you're playing somebody like Mei, and Pharah is wiping you and everybody else on your team out. And you're the first one to notice that Pharah is the problem. And instead of realizing that Pharah is a problem and then doing something about it by switching to a Soldier 76, who can take her out pretty easily, you say, somebody needs to change to Soldier 76. Because if you refuse to switch your hero when you recognize a problem, then, that's just going to be bad for your whole team. And the same thing can be said, if somebody else notices the problem and nobody else on the team switches. If for example, somebody else discovered that the enemy Pharah was the problem and they didn't change, then you need to step up and change. Somebody needs to step up and take that Pharah out, whether it be the person that noticed the problem or not. By everybody recognizing the problem, or just one person recognizing the problem, and then nobody does anything about it, then you guys are just going to continue to get stomped on by that Pharah. So switch your heroes when you realize that you need to switch your heroes. Don't obsessively stick with one hero because maybe that's what you feel comfortable with, or whatever. If you don't feel comfortable switching to a hero that can counter a hero that's destroying your team, again, communicate with your team. Figure out who can take up that role and who can play that role effectively, and make sure that person changes, because refusing to change, especially when your team is urging you to change, is very selfish, and it's going to bring team morale down, and nobody is going to play good when their morale is down. So, moving on, Another form of toxicity is when you're boasting. Really about anything. It could be your medals, it could be your kills, it could be your time on the objective, it could be carrying your team, it could be winning, whatever. If you don't lose gracefully and you feel like you have to put on a show when you do this or that, then that's gonna make a lot of the team mad at you. And they again are not gonna play to the best of their ability, because that's what toxicity does. When players are toxic in these games, the entire team usually performs worse. And you don't want that, especially not in Overwatch where this is a team game. So by bragging about how many gold medals you have or how many kills you have, or you know, how you carried the team, and being selfish about it, that's gonna make your team not like being part of a team with you, and they're probably going to perform worse. And another form of toxicity, and I know this is gonna sound really, really weird, and a lot of you are gonna like just scratch your heads about this, but a form of toxicity, and I learned this the hard way during this game that I recently played, is being upset. If somebody is being toxic to you, the worst thing you can do, the absolute worst thing you can do when somebody's being toxic to you in this game, is by getting upset about it. Because if you get upset, then you're not going to play good, and your whole team is going to suffer. So, I know it sounds like a catch-22, because, you know, our human instinct when we are threatened or attacked is to either, you know, attack back or retreat inward and be upset and stuff. So it's very hard. I admit it's very hard, and I normally don't. When somebody was being toxic on my teams in the past, I would be the one, you know, to ignore it and you know, keep the team, try to keep the team morale up and stuff. But this recent game, when somebody said, "Oh my God, Pharah," because I was playing Pharah, they said, "Oh my God, Pharah, is this your first game? You suck at Pharah," and this and that, and so it felt like a personal attack onto me, and you know, I just lost sight of you know, benefiting the team, and I got upset, and I switched to Mercy and probably did my worst game as Mercy of all time because I was upset, and our team lost probably within a minute because of that. So being upset can be toxic, not necessarily because it makes other people upset, but because, just like being toxic, it will negatively affect your team. So try your best not to get upset when people are being toxic. I know it's very hard, but just try. So that's being toxic. So I know I talked a little bit about how to, you know, combat this, but let's talk a little bit more about how to combat toxicity in Overwatch. So one of the first things that you can do to combat toxicity in Overwatch, it's very simple. It requires literally like 5 key presses to do, and that is pressing enter to go into the chat. Actually, technically it requires 6 presses because you need to probably go to the match channel to do it. But and then all you have to type is GLHF. That stands for good luck, have fun, and that shows people that, you know, you're not in this to, you know, be super aggressive or, you know, be super angry when things don't go your way. You're there to have fun, and you wish everybody else to have fun. And that is one way that, you know, that toxicity can be combated. It's a very small way, and it may not work all the time, but by typing good luck, have fun, GLHF, into the chat, you increase your chances of not having a toxic game substantially. So that's my first tip. Second tip is keep team morale up. No matter what happens, if you're getting stomped on, if you know, the team is pushing the point or you know, pushing the payload, and they have like 8 minutes to do so, and you are just in a losing battle, you know, and your team is getting discouraged, and your team is like, you know, fuck this, I can't, we're gonna fucking lose this. This is bullshit. Try to keep team morale up. Try to, you know, encourage the team to give it their all and to push back. Because there have been games even that I've gone in where we've been getting stomped on, and as soon as either myself or somebody else on the team picks that morale up, we come back and win it. And that is a very, very real thing that happens. So try to keep your team morale up, keep everybody happy, keep everybody energized, and your chances to win that game will go up. So what about when you lose? Well, you should lose gracefully, as I've said. Don't go boasting about stuff. I've seen players do this a lot. They'll be like, oh, I have, gold medals and this and that, and we still lost. My team sucks. So don't do that. Make sure you lose with dignity. Realize that, yes, while your team may be partially to blame, by not fixing any problems that you noticed occurring in the game, or not doing your best to combat those problems, that you're part of the problem too, and you need to admit that you lost as a team. It's not that you won and the rest of your team lost, because you all win and you all lose as a team. So accept your share, accept your 1/6 of the blame for losing that game, and lose gracefully. The next way to combat toxicity is, and this is something I do, and I don't see a lot of people mentioning this in other videos about toxicity with Overwatch, but I found it helps quite a bit. And that is to continuously praise your team for their hard work, even if you lose. So there have been many games, where we've been playing a really intense match, and we still end up losing in the end. Maybe like we're on Route 66, or when we push the payload almost to the very end, and we get pushed back and we end up losing. Or we go back and forth on control points. And even if we lose, I always make sure to continuously praise my team for all the hard work they put in. And that will consist of, pointing out things that certain players did during the match. Like if I notice that our Genji gets a huge team wipe in the game, even if we lose, at the end of that game I'll be like, hey Genji, that was an awesome team wipe that you did earlier. Good job. And, so that helps keep players, happy, and helps soften the blow of a loss for the team. Although I do recommend that if you're going to do this, it's probably best to do it over the mic, because there are times where you can appear sarcastic if you're doing it over chat, and you don't want that. You don't want players just, assuming that you're being sarcastic and mocking them. That's the last thing you want. So if you generally want to make people feel good for the hard work they put in, it's probably best to do it over the mic. I mean, you can do it over chat, but it's very risky, and I wouldn't really recommend it. And this next tip is the tip that I didn't follow very well when I was getting attacked recently in this recent game that I played, is fighting the urge to give up. There was a point where I just internalized what this other person was saying, or how it was a bad Pharah, and to stop, doing this and that and being super toxic to me. And I just internalized that, and I just wanted to give up. I was considering just leaving the competitive game, getting the penalty, and just being done with it. Granted, I didn't leave that competitive game because I didn't really want to get penalized, but I wanted to. I really wanted to just leave the game and be done with it. But, you gotta fight that urge to give up. Continue to give it all you got. I know it's hard, but, just continuously fight to win that game, and even if you can't, make sure that you give it your all, so that at the end you can be like, well, I gave it my all. And of course you can go through all of this and players can still be toxic, and you can do your best to keep team morale up. You can try to be a good and humble player, but there are going to be some times where there's just some players that just refuse to stop being toxic. And what do you do about that? Now, this has been something that I've struggled with, because almost all times that I've seen somebody being toxic that refused to stop being toxic, there's nothing I felt that I could really do about it. But Blizzard has put in some really great options for players, who are, just sick of all the toxicity that they get. So if there's a player on your team that's continuously being toxic, and you can't really stop them from being toxic, it's your responsibility to report that player to Blizzard, because if you can't make them stop being toxic, then Blizzard's gonna have to stop making them being toxic. So there's two ways that you can do that. I'll put a picture up on screen. This is taken from the official Overwatch website about how to actually do this. So you can do it two ways. First is from the chat window. So you first right-click on the person's name in the chat window and select report. You can select the appropriate option. You can enter a description of what the player has been doing, and then you hit send report. Boom, you're done. And a lot of people, and this goes for not just Overwatch, but many online games where toxicity happens, people think that reporting is a waste of time because, that these companies just get flooded with these reports and they don't, really do anything about them. But they don't have to do anything about them. The good thing about Overwatch is that if somebody gets reported enough, then the matchmaking system places them accordingly. And just by reporting them once, you've automatically made it so where that person will probably not show up in a game with you ever again. The matchmaking system takes care of it, and then you can wipe that person free from your hands. Don't have to worry about him anymore. So the second way that you can report a player for being toxic is from the social screen. So you can press O or click the social menu to open the friends and recent players screen. Then you select groups or recent players, depending on if you were in a group or not, you can do that. Then you right-click the player and select report. Then again, select the appropriate option, enter a description of the player's actions, and then click send report, and you're done. And that player, will, if they get reported enough, they could have privileges taken away from them. They could be banned from competitive. They could be banned from the servers altogether. And we know recently with how Blizzard has been dealing with the cheaters in Overwatch that Blizzard has their ways of keeping people out of this game. There have been instances of players who have been caught cheating who have tried a bunch of different ways, through different IP addresses and even buying brand new copies of the game trying to get in, and they can't because Blizzard has a pretty good measure in place for blocking players that they don't want playing their game. So, if a player is toxic enough, rest assured they won't be allowed to play Overwatch, and you can safely enjoy your game without threat of toxicity. But I guess that's really all I had to say on the matter. If you like this video, give it a like. If you haven't, subscribe. And as always, I'm MisterMercy. Peace, everyone.